welcome and thank you for joining ΣիվիլΝեթ today when we are in Stepanakert, the Nagorno Karabakh capital, and we'll be speaking with the spokesperson to the Nagorno Karabakh President, Davit Babayan. Thank you, Mr. Babayan, for joining us today. You've been on the front lines today, and I wanted to ask you an overview of the situation, what's going on.
Well, overall, the situation is stable. But of course, while talking about the situation in general, we have to say, to review it or to view it not in absolute terms, but in comparison with what we had between April 2nd and 5th, and also within the last maybe 1-2 years. If we compare, if we see the situation within these frameworks, then it's relatively stable. Of course, the enemy is continuing violations of the ceasefire regime. It uses heavy weaponry. It targets civilian objects and people. But overall, again, in comparison with this 4-day war and also with this, the last 1-2 years, it's relatively stable.
And about peacekeepers, is it acceptable for Nagorno Karabakh to have peacekeepers on the border? What's your take?
You know, the idea of bringing peacekeepers to the conflict zone is overall acceptable. It's not something bad. We don't think that it's dangerous, the idea. But we have to elaborate a little bit about the timing and places of their deployment. We think that peacekeepers can be deployed only after the conflict is will be completely resolved, completely settled. All the political issues, humanitarian issues, economic, military, should be settled finally. So we have to reach a comprehensive settlement. That means, for example, that Azerbaijan and Artsakh should recognize each other as independent states. The state borders of both states should be recognized by each other. The issue of refugees, the issue of, let's say, economic cooperation, the blockade of some communications, everything should be settled. And only after this, the international peacekeepers can be deployed along the border of the two sovereign states, the Republic of Artsakh and the Azerbaijan Republic. In this case, it will be kind of a symbolic sign, a symbolic move of the international community, somehow signifying its presence in this conflict zone. But when everything is settled, then the idea of deploying peacekeepers maybe will be somehow even already not so actual, because we think that well, they can be deployed again as a symbolic sign, but we have around 200 states, and not all of them have peacekeepers along their borders. But again, I would like to underline that the idea is acceptable within this format when everything is set.
But not as a force to safeguard the ceasefire.
No, I don't think so. First of all, because this conflict is unique in terms of that the peace, relative peace and stability has been maintained by parties to the conflict themselves. We don't have any other example or precedent in international relations where the parties to the conflict can maintain peace themselves. And we think that it's a very substantial component, because it means that the countries, even though now they don't recognize each other, but in principle they can live as neighbors without foreign interference, and we think that it's a very substantial component of future peace. Besides, when the peacekeepers will be deployed here, before all the issues will be solved, they may be target to, I don't know, some tensions or even warfare. They may take side. which is not correct and which is not acceptable. So there are a lot of things concerning the deployment of peacekeepers before final settlement of them.
And about the refugees, you mentioned refugees earlier. Is Nagorno Karabakh ready for return of Azerbaijani residents?
Yeah, you mentioned the last point. We think that we are ready to discuss the return of refugees. But again, there are two aspects which we just cannot neglect. One of them is that refugees can come back when all the political and military issues are solved completely. So they should not become a target of violations or, I don't know, atrocities. Because it's from humanitarian point of view, it will be violation of humanitarian law. And we cannot put at risk the rights of refugees again. And second, there should be a kind of proportional return of refugees, equal return. If Armenian refugees are deprived of the right to return to their homes in Azerbaijan, in different parts, in different towns and even, I don't know, settlements of the present-day Azerbaijani Republic, then there could not be any discussion for Azerbaijani refugees to come back. So we have this kind of very, complicated issues. But this is the reality and we cannot neglect them.
Mr. Babayan, how much faith do you have in the diplomatic process that's going on now, and how long do you think it's going to take?
We think that there is no alternative to diplomatic solution. Why? First of all, because the war, possible large-scale war, and kind of not so short like the 4-day war, but a war for a long period of time will be destructive to both sides, and it will be also a great challenge to the international community because it's pregnant with unpredictable consequences. And many states will be willy-nilly engaged in this conflict, even without their will, because, for example, if Azerbaijan will suffer, for example, on the battlefield, as we had during the first Karabakh war, the national minorities living in Azerbaijan would definitely claim, independence or autonomy. And there are at least 3 nations which claim such, claim their rights. These are Lezgins, Talishis, and Avars. Well, Talishis live also in Iran, and the number of Talishis in Azerbaijan is 600,000 people, and 2.5 million Talishis live in Iran. By the way, these regions are just bordering. We have 300,000 Lezgins in Azerbaijan, and we have the same number of Lezgins in Dagestan, in Russia. We have 50,000 Avars in Azerbaijan and around 500,000 Avars in Dagestan. So in this case, the brethren will come and defend. This will mean that Russia will be engaged in the war. Iran will be engaged. Turkey will take the side of Azerbaijan. This means that Russia and the collective security organization may clash. Even Georgia may become part of the conflict because we have quite, tense land masses of Armenian and Azerbaijani population bordering each other in Georgia. So it will be, can become a source of global conflict. So nobody is interested in such a conflict because, again, taking into consideration humanitarian aspects and geopolitical aspects. Second, this 4-day war also demonstrated that Azerbaijan cannot solve the conflict by force because Azerbaijan can only fight a very short war, kind of a blitzkrieg war. It's not ready for a long-term war because of this ethno-political specifics of Azerbaijan. So diplomatic solution is the only way. We will understand that now the negotiations are almost in deadlock. But even though we think that as time passes on, they will resume definitely. Of course, we also realize that the negotiations will be held at the distorted format, because Baku is opposing any chances of Stepanakert return to the negotiation process, which is ridiculous, because during this 4-day war, Azerbaijan demonstrated that Artsakh is party to the conflict, because they fought us during that war, but they don't want to talk to us. But we think that it's even preferable to have negotiations within this distorted format than large-scale war, because we think that stability and peace is much more important than ambitions. And also we understand that this is a matter of time, and Artsakh one day would definitely join the negotiation process and will be a full party to the negotiations.
How has the concept of people's right to self-determination changed for you before the April war and after?
I would say that here we have a quite interesting evolution of the notion of self-determination. Nagorno Karabakh, everybody knows that was always an integral part of Armenia, and it was forcefully incorporated into Azerbaijan by Soviet Bolshevik, authorities. But it never accepted, of course, such kind of decision, and it always wanted to reunite, to restore historical justice. Living within Azerbaijan Soviet Azerbaijan for 70 years, living in a kind of a, let's say, isolated, under blockade and besieged. This kind of situation developed a specific psychology of Artsakh people, which can be described as national liberation movement psychology. In conventional terms, it looks like a very hot heart. You always think in terms of emotions. You want to restore historical justice. You want to change the status, to realize your right to self-determination. We carried out that. But the first Karabakh war and the second one demonstrated once more that, and also around 25 years of independence also changed that mentality and psychology. Now we have a state building psychology or mentality, which is cold mind, not hot heart. In this case, we have to analyze and take into consideration a bunch of security issues, not only the status, the psychological aspect of being recognized or realizing our right to self-determination, but also how can we protect and secure our state, because we have realized our right twice. One was in 1991 during this nationwide referendum, and the second was in 2006 when we held a second referendum on accepting the constitution, adopting the constitution. And so we have carried out this right. But the problem is security, because when you think in like cold mind, you just apply cold mind approach, you understand that status is not enough to secure the population, to provide security for the people, for the state. And in this case, one of the most important things is to have such a state, such borders, which will allow having the highest possible level of security, because our adversary, our neighbor, Azerbaijan, is a state which is making hero a person who just decapitated a sleeping Armenian soldier. This is a state which threatens to just destroy an airplane, flying civilian airplane from Stepanakert to Yerevan. This is a state which actually cuts the head of Karabakh Defense Army servicemen and shows it in different villages, which cut ears of 95-year-old people in Talish. In this case, the most important thing is how secure will be the state. So we always said that there could be no return to the past in terms of status and in terms of borders, because Nagorno Karabakh borders of 1988 and before, that is the borders of autonomous region, and even the borders of NKR before the war are so vulnerable that they cannot provide security for our people. Even more, this generates kind of feeling on part of Azerbaijan just to attack, and it's a seduction, to attack and suffocate, destroy Nagorno Karabakh. This is why the rights of self-determination without security, which we can guarantee ourselves, provide ourselves without relying on other states, especially Azerbaijan, are key to our survival, because the stakes are the highest. If something happens to Nagorno Karabakh, then the entire Armenian people will lose its independent statehood, because for many centuries we lived on our own land being enslaved, and it generated this complex of inferiority among our people, which culminated after 1915 genocide. This is why in the Armenian diaspora, especially people who lived in great countries, an assimilation wave started in 1960s and 1970s, because the main idea consolidating Armenian people in diaspora was genocide and memory of genocide, which is a victimizing idea. And people didn't want to associate themselves with victim Armenians. They wanted to be victorious Americans, Russians, French. This is why the assimilation started. And it was the Nagorno Karabakh movement and victorious war which actually was a turning point in regaining self-confidence. And within this surrounding, geopolitical surrounding, when we have neighbors like Turkey and Azerbaijan, we have to have a very strong feeling of self-confidence, because it's like geopolitical yoga. Yogas are the same like other people, but they have a special state of mind which allows them overcoming a lot of difficulties which ordinary people cannot. So the same is with us. Without this self-confidence, it will be impossible to survive in these surroundings. Our neighbors are not Denmark, Luxembourg, or Switzerland. It's Azerbaijan, Turkey, genocidal states. This is why if something happened to Nagorno Karabakh, the Armenian people will get this permanent complex of inferiority. And with this complex, it will be impossible to survive in this region.
And about the borders you mentioned and the security, to safeguard Nagorno-Karabakh security, what should be the borders that will make sure that the people in Nagorno-Karabakh are safe?
Now the borders are existing. These borders actually guarantee our security. What will happen in the future, we will see. But again, they cannot be returned to the past. For example, Nagorno Karabakh cannot be an enclave. It's impossible, because it generates again this seduction to just take it. For example, we have another strategically important territories like the Karvachar region or the former Kalbajar region. It's a hydro donor of Armenia and Nagorno Karabakh. 85% of former Nagorno Karabakh autonomous region water resources originate there. Two main rivers, Arpa and Vorotan, which feed Lake Sevan and save Sevan from drying up, from ecological catastrophe, are originating there. How can we give this territory to an enemy which never conceals its intentions to just destroy Nagorno Karabakh, especially when we have, let's say, bad memories of hydroterrorism. For example, they poisoned water resources of capital Stepanakert in 1990. They put a very toxic element in the water supply system of Stepanakert, and we couldn't drink water for 2 weeks from taps. All the poultry all the geese, all those domestic animals died up. They said that Armenian side is burying nuclear waste in Kelbajar, which is not true, but we think, okay, guys, when they say such things, it means that if tomorrow they take control of that territory, they will put some nuclear waste and just make a blue genocide, commit a blue genocide, and they will say, no, it's not us, it's you who buried there those things. So it's such a complicated issue. It's not the matter of ambition, as famous Andrei Sakharov said. For Nagorno Karabakh, that conflict that is a matter of survival. For Azerbaijan, it's a matter of ambitions. So we have to think in these terms too.
Thank you, Mr. Babayan, for speaking with us, and I hope the viewers found this informative.